Hello everybody, this is Yoko's Anime Reactions, and this is going to be my review for Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation Episodes 1 and 2. Apparently, this is obviously another isekai, and I've heard good things about it, though I had no clue what I'm getting myself into. Anyway... The main character, a man in his mid-30s, gets hit by a truck while apparently trying to save some people who were standing in the road like idiots talking. I mean, if you're gonna argue with other people, don't do it in the middle of the street where there's traffic. It's as simple as that. Take your conversation to the sidewalk and then argue all you want. Don't do it in the middle of the road. That's stupid. Anyway, he ends up getting reincarnated as a baby, which isn't something that we see very often. And, because usually when somebody gets reincarnated in these isekais, they either get reincarnated into their actual bodies from, before they died, or they get reincarnated as a monster, or as a child, but not quite a literal baby. Because, by the grace of the gods, reincarnated somebody into a child. So, this one does it as a baby, and the guy doesn't even realize that he was reincarnated until he reaches up to try and grab at his mother's chest, thinking, oh, she left herself wide open like that, I might as well. And he reaches up and you can see his tiny hands, and I'm like, oh, yeah, you were a baby. Yeah, the guy is a big pervert, too. And from what little we see of the show so far, he's a shut-in. And, can somebody explain a few things? Like, is he a bad guy in his old life? Are there just people who just like to pick on him? Or... what was he doing during that whole thing where they showed up at his house and beat the living crap out of him and kicked him out of the house? What were they doing? What was going on there? Could somebody tell me? I thought he was, doing that. But I could be wrong. Maybe he was scratching himself at that point. I don't know. Anyway, this show is rated TV MA. And I didn't understand why until a little bit later, when obviously he still has and the thing is he still has his memories of when he was like 30-something years old. So he's a lot more advanced than he could be because he teaches himself how to read, for one thing, in a language he does not understand. It'd be one thing if it was, English or Japanese or whatever that he would have to reteach himself. That's one thing. But this is a different language entirely. They turned on the light on the porch. I just know. I was like, what the heck? Anyway, apparently his family is wealthy enough to have a live-in maid, but live out in the sticks, essentially. Anyway, at first he thinks that he got reincarnated as somebody who lives out in the country in Europe. I can understand that. Because, you don't if you get reincarnated at all, you would usually expect to get reincarnated in, Earth. Even if it ends up being sometime in the future, or even weirder, in the past. However, that little, assumption dies when he ends up falling over as a baby and hits his head, and his mother heals him with a healing spell. At first he thought that his parents were avid nerd role players, that like the fighter married the cleric, and no, this is actually real life magic in this world. And like I don't know if this is quite like Akashic Records of Bastard Magic Instructor, where you could, instead of using the whole incantation, you could either shorten it or use something entirely, but he ends up casting it without a dang incantation after a bit, which apparently is not heard of, because apparently think that if you try to use the spell without the incantation, you won't be able to do it. I mean, all he has to do is show them or explain to them how he's doing it, and they might be able to, reproduce that themselves, or at least the mother should be able to. And he ends up practicing in the house on magic, on how to create water ball, to the point where he can create it a lot. And he ends up teaching himself an intermediate spell, which makes a gigantic hole in the house, and finally alerts his parents to what had happened, which his mother is excited about because she probably wanted to teach her son magic. But apparently they had agreed that if they had a boy, they would teach him how to use a sword. I mean, that's all fine and good, but if the child has no aptitude in fighting and is very adept in magic, that plan is going to change. You can't just force someone to use an ability that they cannot do, no matter how much they practice. Because, I mean, that's essentially a weakness. If you can't do it, no matter how much you try, or no matter how much you want it, and you can't do it, there's not much you can do, essentially. I mean, because he's naturally gifted at magic, for crying out loud. Because I think at the age of, I'm guessing like a year old or something like that, he was able to cast 2 water ball spells. 2. At a year old. And when this happens, they end up getting him a tutor, Roxy, and apparently odd hair color is a sign of something bad in this world, where if you have green hair, you are considered a superb, which is a demon that is too dangerous to essentially be around anybody else. And if you have green hair, well, you better go run and hide, because you'll probably have an angry mom after you, essentially. I don't know what it means about purple hair, but apparently she's a demon. They didn't really explain about purple hair, though, because apparently green hair is the sign of a superb. But the reason that this show is rated TV MA is because multiple times in these episodes, we hear the parents going at it like rabbits. No, I'm not even kidding. And the funny thing is, the next time we hear it, after Roxy shows up, he goes to take a look and act like he's gonna mess with them, essentially, and say, "Mommy, Daddy, why are you guys naked?" or something like that, and mess with them and see what their reaction is. And then he starts to walk out of his room, and he sees Roxy sitting there, and she's getting excited in a different way. Thankfully, she didn't notice him, so he just walked back into his room and tried to pretend like that didn't happen, essentially. So I'm like, really, y'all? And like I said, the perv in him is still there, because even as a 3, 4 year, no, I think he started building magic with her around 3 years old, and then around 2 years later, she has nothing to teach him, essentially. So in 2 years, she ends up teaching him all that she knows. And yeah, the pervert in him is still in there, because at one point while they're doing lessons inside, she's sitting there, has her legs kind of crossed, but he looks over like this, essentially, before they have the demon talk, and he can still see, you can barely see her underwear still, even despite that. And I'm like, perv, you're lucky you're a little kid, because if you were a teenager doing that, you'd get slapped. And she even said that, use those pickup lines on me in 10 years, I might actually... I'm like, really? But yeah, apparently he learned in 2 years what she took a lifetime to learn, which makes me wonder, how old is she actually? She said she's a demon, so I'm assuming she lives for a decent amount of time longer than humans, so how long has she been alive? I don't know. Maybe we'll find out. Anyway, I'm assuming that now that Roxy has left, they're going to send him to that magic academy across the way, and he'll be learning magic from them, because essentially she can't teach him anymore. He's learned all she knows. Which makes me wonder, how old's the youngest student they have there? I guess we'll find out. Anyway, yeah, I decided to pick this show because I just didn't feel like recording for the other shows at the moment, and I just really wanted to pick this one up, so that's why I picked it up. And I mean, technically, I finished the time I got reincarnated as a slime, partially because the part 2 has not come out yet in the dub, so I'm just waiting on that at the moment. So, I mean, anyway, but yeah, I will try and get some stuff recorded tomorrow if I'm able to. It just depends on them. They try to share a tablet and they don't like sharing, obviously, because one likes to play games and the other likes to watch YouTube videos, so I'd let them watch it on their TV, but they broke their TV. Anyway, I'll get to work on this and I'll see you next time.